So this is part 2 of my 2-part series on moving to Mexico. My wife and I moved into this wonderful home on the beach in just outside La Paz, Mexico. And in this 2-part series, I'm talking about all the different things that we came upon on moving down here. So this video is focusing on money, things like setting up a bank account and getting internet service and paying for natural gas or contractors or shopping. Video 1 focuses more on procedural things like getting a fideicomiso for your house or buying a house or renting an apartment, crossing the border, getting your residency permits, things like that. So if you want to watch that video, you'll find that in the upper right-hand corner, whichever one that is. And down below in the YouTube description, you'll find links to jump ahead to other parts of the video, say you want to learn about LP gas or drinking water. And this video is all about my experience, or my wife and my experience, and your experience will be different, but hopefully it'll be a little bit more smooth after watching this video. Also, if you're someone who's already gone through this journey and you have tips to share, please leave those in the comment section down below. And if you're watching this video to get those tips, make sure you check the comments down below too. And watch in the upper right-hand corner again. If I have to post something that's an update or an amendment, you'll find a link up there taking you to another video with an update. So let's jump in where I talk about paying your bills, like your electric bill, water bill, internet bill. There isn't necessarily a mail service here. I guess there is a mail service, but it's not reliable. And you have to pay your bills whether or not you get a bill. So if you expect one to be coming in the mail and it doesn't arrive, that's no excuse for not having paid it. The addresses here can be very confusing too. Some places have addresses, like in La Paz, I think there are actual street addresses. In our town, El Centenario, there are addresses for some people, but our address, which is on our electric bill, so that's the official address is on the CFE bill, is something like mile marker or kilometer marker 14.5 on the North Highway in El Centenario, near the old hammock store next to a post in the road that we've never found with a specific number on it. So our place is hard to find, but there's a little mailbox thing on our gate, and we find the water bill in there, and we find different bills in there as they go. I think they just kind of come by and put them in your box. But it's been a little bit of a challenge for getting things shipped here. We'll talk a little bit about that further on in the video. Transferring the bills has been and continues to be a little bit of a challenge. So I'm going to go through each of these bills one by one. So hopefully that'll make things easier for you. Now, paying bills here has gotten easier. A lot of things can just be paid online. A lot of things you need a Mexican credit card for if you plan on paying with a credit card, or an Amex. There's also a lot of places that take PayPal. You can pay most of your bills at an OXXO, which is kind of like a 7-Eleven from the United States. You just go in there with your number, and a lot of people pay their bills that way. There's a lot of places that have these ATM-like machines that you can pay your bills for the different services. You go into an office or even a shopping center, and they've got the kiosks there where you can pay your bills. So for the most part, it's pretty automated. It's just the getting the bill is maybe a little bit complicated. So you really need to know when things are due here, because you are responsible. We're not necessarily, people aren't coddled here so much. You're expected to know when things need to happen. Same thing if you go to get something transferred, they don't necessarily tell you everything you're missing. So if you're missing, if you come in, you have to have 10 things, you only have 5. They're like, oh, you're missing this one. And then when you come back, now you've got 6 things, but they're like, oh, you're missing this one. So they don't necessarily give you all the information. They're not like, oh, let me go through everything and tell you all the pieces you're missing. They just get to the point where you're missing something and they can't go forward, and they tell you about that one. So make sure you ask them, is everything else ready to go? Is that the last thing I need? So to move things into your name, bills into your name, you often need a bill that's in your name. So it's a little bit tricky, but so you need the past bills that kind of give them the account number and the address and things like that. But you also need something that shows that you're the person that's living there. So you could use that fideicomiso if you bought a house, or we had a notary letter saying that our fideicomiso was coming because it was kind of delayed. So we were able to use that as proof. And we went first to Telmex, which was the phone company, because we really needed internet. We needed internet and we needed it yesterday. So we went in there. That was the first one we worked on. I was actually able, the internet speed here was like 1.5 megabits per second when we moved in, and I was able to talk to their online people, their online tech support, and they spoke English. That was great. I was able to find someone who spoke English, and they sent out a technician to fix it because they said, yeah, your service should be faster than that, but we can't upgrade your service to anything even faster until we fix this service and you get it transferred to your name. So we fixed the service, got it up to 20 megabits per second, which is reasonable. We still wanted faster. We got the service transferred into our names, and then we were told, oh, by the way, the lines in your area are too old. We don't have fiber there yet. There's fiber on the main road where our address is on, but that's, 1/10 of a mile away. So we couldn't get fiber. We couldn't get upgraded DSL. I'll talk more about internet connections. But the key here is that we got something transferred into our names. We paid the existing bill and went through, and the woman put it into our names, and then we got a receipt that said it was in our names. We were able to print that up at one of those little copy shops. One of the things I'd do differently is we now have a printer. I would buy a printer right away to be able to make your own copies, to make your own prints, because it just eliminates one more stop along the way with getting everything done. And sometimes the copy place isn't open as early as the agency that you need to get to. So it just kind of complicates things. So get a printer. So once I had that bill with my name on it, I printed up a number of copies of that. And you do need the entire bill, all the pages of the bill, not just the first page that has your name on it. I learned that a couple times, is they want to see the whole thing, not just the part with your name. So one of the things I wish I had done early was to get a local phone number. I was trying to avoid that, trying to save $10 a month. I was like, oh, I could just use my phone number from the US. WhatsApp, very popular here, and that will work for communicating with anyone either by phone or by text message. I didn't want to get a Mexican phone number. I would advise you to go ahead and get a Mexican phone number. $10 a month, pretty cheap for a prepaid plan. I went through AT&T. My iPhone plan up in the States is through AT&T. It's actually now, if you have an iPhone 10 or newer, and you can use an eSIM, and that allows you to put two phone numbers on the same phone. So I went to the AT&T store. There's kind of a shopping mall near us. Went to the AT&T store, talked to them. And I said, I don't want this eSIM. And they said, only the downtown store can do eSIMs. And so go back on Monday, go to the downtown store. I went to the downtown store and tried to communicate with them. They only spoke Spanish. So I was trying to communicate with them that I wanted this eSIM thing. And we were going around and around. And finally, the woman just, pulled up something on her computer, typed into Google Translate, and turned her computer to show me that it said, there's only one person in this office who can do eSIMs, and that person's on vacation this week. I was like, okay, well, I need this damn phone number, and I'll tell you why I needed it in a second. But I ended up getting a chip for my phone with a phone number, a Mexican phone number, and paid the $10 for a month, and then ended up a week later going back and talking to the gentleman about the eSIM when he was off vacation. In between, it was really kind of a pain in the butt because I couldn't get text messages to my US number when I had the SIM from Mexico in, but I couldn't get calls from Mexico if I had the US SIM in. So I had to keep switching back and forth, and I was missing messages from different people or not getting phone calls. So having the eSIM, though, and I believe you can just add more and more cellular plans to your phone. So it's pretty nice. Love that I have it now. I had to pay an extra $5 or $10 to have it transferred over to an eSIM, but that took just 20 minutes. Now I'm able to run both of them. If someone calls either number, it rings on my phone. So it's a great system. When we first came down here and we were having problems with the internet, we thought, oh, well, let's switch over to AT&T unlimited data. AT&T allows you to use their plans in Mexico or Canada. So that sounded like a great thing. And my wife used through her unlimited data for tethering within a week. So the unlimited plan's not quite as unlimited as you would think, especially if you're doing, and she's just doing Zoom meetings. This is not something, super complicated, but definitely used up a lot of unlimited data. That wasn't a good option for us. We felt like that was going to be a good fallback plan for when our internet wasn't fast enough that we could just use our cell phones. Not the best plan. It's still an option out there, but it only can work in an emergency because there's just not enough data on their unlimited plans. I want to say it's 15 gigabytes of tethered data and maybe another 15 gigabytes directly through the phone. But, Zoom calls can use that up really fast. Also, I haven't been able to confirm this, but they told me at the AT&T store that there's something like 60 or 90 days that you can have a prepaid card without paying for it, that they won't get rid of your number. So I want to be able to keep this number now that I have it. I won't necessarily have to pay $10 a month. I can only, I can just renew for a couple of days, once or twice during the summer, just to keep the phone number and then re-up it again when I get here. But I can't say that completely for sure. I haven't tried it yet. So getting a local bank is something that I wish we'd done earlier. We paid a lot of ATM fees because we were having contractors work on our house and you pay people in cash here. We were paying a lot of ATM fees. I guess if you had a bank back home that would reimburse your ATM fees in other places, maybe that would not be as much of a problem, but you also have exchange rates and things like that. We were paying a lot of dollars in ATM fees. So there was also an issue with limitations on how much you could withdraw. So even though our bank back home would let us take out $1,000 a day, the banks down here would only allow you 6,000 pesos, which is like $300. So we would have to go to ATMs from 3 different banks if we wanted to get out $900 during one day. So the good news is contractors are cheap here, and I'll be talking more about contractors later, but it was definitely a pain in the butt and definitely a lot of fees. So we finally got around to opening a bank account here. And that was definitely quite a number of trips, definitely a lot of need for copies of your passport, copies of your green cards. You have to have your green card first, your bills with a local address. So I'm glad that we had that Telmex bill all set up. The other thing was having a local cell phone number. This is something I didn't have when we started the process with the bank. And we sat there for a good couple of hours working with someone at the bank. And she was mostly speaking Spanish, and we didn't understand quite what was going on. But finally, she said, okay, I'm going to work this through. And she was on the phone with tech support, and she got it to work, even though we didn't have a Mexican cell phone number. And so that was great. We thought, this is great. So we left, and she had said, okay, well, you got to go and turn your ATM cards on. And that's one thing I wish we would have done right there, because it was a little bit confusing in terms of how you activate the ATM card. You had to go in something like view your balance, and that was going to trigger the changing the PIN code. We didn't do that till later. We tried to set up the mobile accounts, but we hadn't activated our cards yet. So that was confusing. And the other thing is, with accessing your bank account online or through mobile, they send you a text message to confirm that you are you. And without having a cell phone in Mexico, it wasn't able to work, and they couldn't send the text message to the States, and they couldn't send it to some different texting services or through WhatsApp. So we ended up breaking down and getting that phone number here. And I just wish we would have started out with that phone number, because going back to the bank to get that number changed so that we could access the mobile app and pay our bills online and things, that took about another 2 hours, because they kind of started over from scratch. Even though they used the same account number, they wanted all 6 pages of the telephone bill and copies of the passport and copies of our green card, all these different things. So that was quite a process. And one of the things here in Mexico, everything, as I mentioned, takes longer than you think it should. So typically when I go into La Paz to kind of get business done, I leave wanting to do 3 things and come back lucky if I've completed 1. We feel really good about collecting information, about being able to say like, oh, well, we're 1 step closer because we know what's missing, or we know what office to go to, or we know something that's going to get us closer to having something set up. And that has to be the win that we take. So you take your wins when you can get them. So the other thing at the bank is to request the app access and online access when you set up the account. We were really kind of burned out, and we didn't. And like, it asked for your username online, and we didn't have a username because we hadn't asked for that to be set up. So once again, they don't give you everything that you would expect. You have to specifically ask, and they will specifically set it up for you when you're at the bank. So now we can use the mobile app, and it's nice because you can hand them your mobile phone and they will go through and do all the setup and make sure it's right. But definitely have to know what you want to be able to ask for it. Other thing was understanding what terms were used on Google to know when we're going to a branch office, which I think is a sucursal. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Or an ATM, which was like a caja automatica, or if it was a corresponsal, which I think is just a place where you can use your card. So like the OXXO up here, it lists a Banorte, which is our bank, corresponsal. And so I was like, oh, okay, great. I guess I can use my card there to get a small amount of cash, kind of like using an ATM, but actually going up to the counter. So understanding that to know when you're going to a branch office and when you're going to something that really doesn't have anything to do with your bank, but will take your card. So then there's getting money into your bank account from your foreign account. And I use a service called TransferWise, and it's actually a really great service, a really good fees for transferring like an exchange rate, a very fair exchange rate, something that I use with a contractor over in England. She's the one who introduced me to that. And there'll be a link down below if you want to use that. It is an affiliate link, so I get a little bit of a kickback from TransferWise for signing people up. But it's a great system. You just put in your account information up there, put in your account information down here. You transfer the money into TransferWise, and then you transfer it over in pesos into your bank account here. And that second transfer happens almost instantaneously. The first one, they have to make sure they got the money from your bank and that they have it before they'll transfer it. But you can transfer that money anywhere in the world, and it's a pretty great service. But you do have to pay attention to what the exchange rate is. So that exchange rate is always changing. So if you get a day where the more favorable exchange rates, you'll get more pesos down here in your bank than if you go on a day that has a less favorable exchange rate. So pay attention to that, because like you're paying contractors in pesos. But right now, and it's been pretty close to this for a while now, is that there's 20 pesos to a dollar. So it's pretty easy, even if it fluctuates 19 or 21, it's pretty easy just to think through it, to say like, okay, you've got a 200 peso bill. So you just whack off the final zero. So now you're down to 20 and then cut it in half. So a 200 peso bill is $10. And 600 pesos is $30. So it's pretty easy to translate, unlike some other currencies, at least for now, until the exchange rate changes a bunch more. Okay, electricity. This one is the one that's still ongoing and has been the biggest pain in my butt. CFE is the electrical utility here. I think it's run by the government, and I guess there's some strong connections between the government and CFE. Like if you don't pay your taxes, they can turn off your electricity, stuff like that, I guess. But this one's been a challenge. They want to see a lot of information. They want to see that you own this house. They want to see past bills. Often they want to see a number of past bills from the house with the other person's name on it. I think ideally you would have a letter from the old person saying that they give you permission to transfer this. You need to see your fideicomiso. And the new thing they needed was, and of course your passport and your green card and things like that. The new thing they needed was an RFC number, RFC. And this is essentially like a social security number in Mexico. And most people told us we didn't need that. And we went back and forth and whatnot. And there's kind of a generic RFC number that is used in certain instances, and that was what was used in the past to set up service here, but they said, no, that one's no longer good. So when I tried that one, they said no. I went online and tried something, and it gave me a number, which I thought was my RFC number, and they said, no, that one's not good. So I ended up hiring someone now, and I haven't even finished the process, but I hired someone locally who helps with immigration and just helps out a lot of foreigners get through the process. So I'm hoping that he's going to get me that RFC number. It's definitely something you need to sell your house, and it's definitely something you need if you're making money in Mexico. So if you're making money and you need to pay taxes, so if you've got a business operating down here, if you've got Mexican clients, you need that number, and you need to pay your taxes monthly. That is not us, so I think we're able to set up an RFC that's like a kind of a non-income earner number. So it's been a lot of trips to the CFE office downtown, and I'm slowly working my way closer and closer to getting the utilities into my name. And the utilities, I was planning on setting them up in my name. So I needed a letter from my wife, whose name is on the deed or the fideicomiso, saying that she's okay with the utilities being put in my name, which was just a little bit strange. But they were kind enough at the CFE office. The woman was actually able to type it out for us and say, this is what we need you to sign. They've been really super nice, but the procedures, I guess, have changed over time to be more and more strict on that RFC number. So we're at that point now where it's been probably, I think I've been 5 times to the downtown office and 1 time to one of the more suburban offices. I've gone in and paid the bills, but I need to get them into my name so that I can get online access so that I can pay them when I go back to the US and do everything online. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. So down in the description below, I actually included that little spot what they typed out for my wife to give me permission to put them in my name. So you can look down in the description if you need that text that the CFE gave us. So you'll find that down below. So next up is water. So the houses here, they all have water they have city water, but it's not necessarily clean. So that's kind of, everyone knows not to drink the water in Mexico. It's just the pipe system and the way the water is delivered. It's not delivered 24 hours a day to most places. So then you end up with bacteria in the pipes because it's turned off for a period of time. But we have a cistern, and most people, that's what they have. So you have a cistern that gets the water in while the water's running, and then you store the water on site, and then you pump it out, almost like a well. You pump it out when you need it. There is online a calendar, I think, that gets posted every month that tells you kind of when you're going to get water, during what hours of the day. But we haven't had to deal with that at all. The water it fills up the cistern. We even had when we cut it off and we went for days without having water from the city and just continued using the cistern water. So that's the water that is used for washing dishes, for taking showers, taking baths, things like that. But for cooking or drinking water, we get water shipped in 5-gallon jugs. And that was something that our real estate agents kind of guide told us how to set that up. It's pretty simple. Everything down here is some things like the bureaucratic stuff, like CFE. It's taken forever. We're 6 weeks into this process now. We still don't have the bill in our name. But the water guy was pretty simple. We just send him a message on WhatsApp saying we wanted water. We told him how much we wanted, and he came by the next day with the jugs, and we paid him. So the jugs are, I think, $1.50 each, so 30 pesos for a refill of 5 gallons of water. And I want to say about 100, like a deposit on the jug of maybe 100 pesos or something, $5 for the jug. So we end up getting 5 jugs at a time, and that usually lasts us a little over a week. And then we're getting close to running out. We just send him a message on WhatsApp saying we need more, and he just drives by. I think he comes Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Any of those days when we send him a message, he'll come by with more jugs of water. So super convenient service that is provided here in town. You can also go to an OXXO and buy a 5-gallon jug, or which I guess is a little bit more expensive. You can also go to places in town to refill your jugs of water. I'm guessing that's a little less expensive because you're not paying for the service of getting them delivered. But it's so convenient to get them delivered. And then we just put them into a dispenser on our counter, and we found a really beautiful dispenser here in town, a place that makes pottery. So that's where we get our water from, our drinking water, our potable water. And we haven't been so good about washing off things with bottled water, like vegetables or lettuce or things like that. But you're able to get a spray. We've started using this now. There's a spray that you spray on your vegetables to kind of clean off any bacteria, and then you wash them with bottled water. So we haven't gotten sick by being exposed to any of the local water. I always brush my teeth in the local water. My wife, Kat, she uses bottled water for that. She's a little more nervous than me. But we haven't had any problems, and we eat street food and whatnot. I'm feeling pretty good, crossing my fingers. But we do have Cipro on hand that we got back in the States, just in case we run into something that needs some Cipro. And we do give our pets the bottled water. But we do feed the birds out here and put water out for the birds, and there's different spots. We had a leak, and the pets were drinking kind of the local water. I think they're a little more resilient than we are, but for the most part, most of the Americans here, as we understand, feed their pets the bottled water. But to move the water, or it's called SAPA here, to move that water bill into our names, that's been a little bit of a challenge. First off, finding the office. The caretaker told us approximately where it was, and when I got close, I found a worker's truck that had SAPA on the side, and I said, "Where's the office?" And in Spanish, and he pointed the way, and I was able to find my way there, and I was able to pay the bill. But to get it transferred into my name, once again, I needed copies of a number of things, the prior bill, and also you need copies of your paid tax receipt. This is also municipal water, so they want to know that your property taxes are paid, and that's been a little bit tricky too. We were able to pay our property taxes online, but they still hadn't recorded that the property taxes had been paid when we closed. So we're still working through that to be able to transfer the water bill into our name. So this is a time when I really wish I had that printer because there are no copy shops in our little town. There are no places where you can print things out and make copies. I have to go into La Paz to make copies. So if I need something that's just here in the town because I'm walking distance from the water office, I have to go in to make those copies and then come back. But now I'm good. I have a printer. So the other thing here that you need for utilities is gas. Everything runs on LP gas. So your hot water heater is running on gas. Your stove is running on gas. It's very uncommon to see an electric stove here. And the gas isn't like natural gas delivered through a pipeline. Everyone has a tank. So we actually, I think, have 3 tanks on our property. One tank is for the pool, which the pool is, we're taking the pool out. It's in really bad shape, but it's a big tank. And this was one of those really fast things where we were told in our homeowner's guide who to call to get gas in the tank. And I think I called on a Saturday morning and said, hey, I need gas. This guy spoke English, and I explained where we live. And he said, okay, I'll be there in an hour. And an hour later, there was a truck with gas, and they just filled up our tank. They filled up our RV also, and then we were able to pay with a credit card. Not always something you can pay with a credit card, so we had cash just in case, but that was super easy. And then we just watched the tank to see when it goes low. So when there's no one living here except for the caretaker, our tank lasted us an entire year, but we're just kind of watching it now to see when we need to refill. I expect it'll last months before we need our next refill. So earlier I talked about internet options and what we're getting here through our DSL and AT&T as a backup. But the next thing, we really were looking for better internet options. And we've looked through a number. So I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of what's available here. There is fiber internet available in other parts of the town and kind of like the nicer housing developments that are for expats. They all have fiber internet, but we've also heard that it's not reliable. Like if someone gets hooked up, someone else might get knocked off. That the internet speed's like 200 megabits per second, whereas fiber internet back home is like a gigabit per second. And that wasn't available at our home. That was through the local telephone company, and it's just not here yet. So that we had to cross off the list. We looked into what's called point-to-point service. So down in La Paz, we're lucky. La Paz has a cable that goes to the mainland. There's a lot of other places as we were driving down that internet service was awful, even through our cellular. It was just really, really slow. But here in La Paz, there's a cable directly to the mainland, so we have better internet here probably than anywhere in the Baja Peninsula. We can see the city directly across the water here. There's a tower, and they can set up a system called point-to-point where they set up a little satellite dish almost and point it towards that tower, and you're able to beam you 200 megabit per second plus internet upload and download. So that's a good option. It was just really pricey. I want to say the install cost was like $2,000 US to get that installed. And for the amount of time we're here, we were trying to avoid that. We ended up going with Mega Cable, which is cable internet. Definitely was a challenge getting it set up and going to their office and seeing when it was coming. Somehow our order got lost, I think. And so we were calling in. They weren't able to find our order. I went in. It's so much easier to go in person and talk with people, especially my Spanish isn't very good. So working through it with them directly, they kind of rewrote the order up and told us the next day they'd be out, and then they were. But that was a good 15 days after we started that process of waiting and checking and hearing that it was still coming. So the internet cable was installed. It's been a little bit flaky though. I got to say it's not 100%. It goes down a little too often. So I'm going to be working with them. I'm actually looking at an option where there's a router where you can hook up two wide area networks, 2 WANs, so that when we hook up to that, it'll use either one. If one goes down, the other one will take over, and it'll divide it out and use both of them. So I'm looking at that. Haven't quite made that step yet, but I'm hoping also to get better cable speed. And so we're supposed to be getting 100 megabits per second download speed, and that's what they talk about. We're getting about 80 or 90 typically. Upload speed has been pretty dismal, as low as 2 megabits per second up, and maybe up to 10 megabits per second up, which is pretty slow if you need good upload speed. Definitely dig in and get in writing the upload speed, because I think when they told me, I asked them what the upload speed was, and they said, oh, it's slower, like 80 megabits per second. I was like, 80, that's great, I'll take it. But that's not what showed up. So you can also get a Telcel hotspot. Telcel is a pretty big wireless network here, and you can just get a hotspot that you can plug into. That was our original backup plan, but then we thought, well, with AT&T, we've got that as an option. I haven't really explored the Telcel option because I thought there were better options with Mega Cable. If we can get that working, that will be a good option. We just feel like we need to have at least 2 or 3 internet options that definitely work. So Telcel is a possibility, or you can get an AT&T hotspot also. And another option that we didn't really look into was satellite internet. So you can kind of get that anywhere in the world. As I understand, it's a little bit pricey for the amount of data. I like, clearly I like making videos, and so I use a lot of data. So that wasn't a good option. And the other thing that's kind of coming that we expect to happen in 2022 is Starlink. Starlink's already launching thousands and thousands of satellites that are floating above us, and you can go on their website and see how often the Starlink satellites are above you. And right here, the coverage is something like 65% right now for La Paz. Up in Seattle, it's closer to 99%, but they're just rolling it out. And the idea is you'll be able to connect to all of their satellites anywhere in the world for a set fee. So that's kind of why we didn't want to pay that $2,000 fee to connect and build a tower here in our yard, because Starlink seems like it's coming, and that would give us access anywhere all the way down. We'd be able to run it in Portland. We'd be able to run it down here. So it seems like a much better deal coming in the future. So something to look forward to, especially if you're watching this video in the future. I'm making this in 2021. Okay, so let's talk about contractors, people who are helping out. We bought a fixer-upper, so we knew we were going to hire a lot of people to fix it up. The beauty is that labor in Mexico is cheap. If you have stuff that requires a lot of man hours or people hours, then it's going to be cheap. Things like wood are expensive. There's not a lot of wood in the desert, so it's not a local material. Concrete is cheap. Steel, they make a lot of stuff out of steel, even some aluminum. So metal and concrete, cheap. Wood, expensive. Electronics, expensive. Things are built a little bit differently down here. So we started out with one contractor that our real estate agent suggested for painting our house, because that was something that was really high. Our house, we just didn't like the brownish color, and we wanted something really happy. So we found a contractor to do that. He gave us a great price. And there's kind of, I guess there's a couple different types of contractors here. There are general contractors who are more well-known and will build houses and kind of have a lot of very professional trades that are more expensive, on down to the jack-of-all-trades type of person. And then there's people who are kind of specialists but do a lot of stuff. So Augustine was our painter here, and he's done a really great job, gave us a really fair price. I want to say it was something like $2,000 or something to paint the entire outside of our house. And our casita, because we have 2 buildings here, and the garage. There was a lot of concrete that was falling apart that needed to be repaired. So it was an awful lot of work. They also had to paint the metal windows. The metal was in pretty bad shape, a lot of rust. So a lot of work for $2,000. And I think we ended up paying for the paint, might have been a few $100s on top of that. So the paint was actually dropped off here. We paid with a credit card. They had a little machine that they brought to our house to pay for the materials. And we just were paying in cash installments for the labor. And Augustine had a couple of different jobs running. So he would be here most days. Sometimes he would drop off his crew. He's got some crew, and he would bring in extra people. He did some extra work in terms of, like, on our casita, there were some leaks in the roof. So he brought out a specialist for that. But the beauty is these contractors all know each other. So when we needed someone to do locks or to do electrical, plumbing, we were just able to ask Augustine, who did he know? Someone who's kind of redoing our outdoor chairs because the fabric had ripped on those. So he brought in someone. So they all know each other, and it's kind of some of them are really a family. Other ones just kind of feel like a family. So it's been great. Most of the people that we work with, Augustine, Lucero, they speak English, and they bring in other people who speak less English to do a lot of the work. So a lot of the work, they're probably lower wage people, but still the prices are very fair when it comes to labor here. So one other thing that's really expensive is dishwashers. Almost impossible to find a dishwasher here, and if you find one, they're very expensive. So the people here had great appliances, Bosch dishwasher, but it was old and it wasn't working. And we had a repair person come out and he said, yeah, well, I could fix this, but it's 20 years old and I'm not sure how long it's going to last. The water here is really hard water. We've ended up doing our dishes on our own because I want to say it was $600 for just a very basic level dishwasher. And it took a long time to find that. If you go into an appliance store, dishwashers just aren't a thing they have here. So, of course, you're going to need to do shopping while you're here. And in La Paz, it's a bigger city. So there is one Home Depot, there's one Walmart, there's one Sam's Club. Down in Cabo, there's a Costco, and I think there's a Petco. So a lot of kind of American chains are here. They're just not as prominent. And there are a lot of local specialty stores. For instance, there are ferreterias, hardware stores, but then they're even more specific there. There might be one that's all about plumbing, one that's all about electrical, something about HVAC, something that's related to gas appliances. And then there's one here, which I love. It's called a talaparia, which is even smaller. It's just you walk up to the counter and ask for what you need. So that's been a lot of fun doing some of this shopping here. But so that's hardware stores. There's also nurseries. That's been fun. The plants here are really inexpensive, but of course, groceries. So we found a local big grocery store. There's a lot of very big grocery stores that also sell everything else. So they're kind of more like a Target with a bigger grocery store component to it, almost a little department store-y. We found a Soriana, which is a pretty big chain here, but there's other grocery stores that are a little more local. I think this is maybe a national chain, but Chedraui was something that was recommended by other expats as having kind of better quality food and more Americanized food. Something hard, I'm going to go over some of the things that are hard to get here, but cheeses, unless you like kind of the queso blanco, the white Mexican cheese, finding other foreign cheeses is very hard, but Chedraui has a little bit of a selection of that. They also have some of the other things that are kind of more Americanized food, a better wine selection. A lot of the grocery stores are just easy to find because they're big and they have signs, and often there are even road signs that point to them. But getting a recommendation from other expats is a really good thing to get to the stores that kind of sell things, have a better selection or better prices. And of course, also getting suggestions for smaller stores, just like those, the ferreterias or hardware stores can be very specialized. There's a lot of people here have their own small business. So as you walk back into kind of the city streets here in El Centenario or into La Paz, there's lots of tiny little stores, little convenience stores. We get our fruit from Lupia's Fruteria. There's places to get tortillas, and there's just a lot of places to buy things kind of that old-fashioned way, in small quantities and more often. So it's just a better experience than going to like a big grocery store. But it is all paying cash, but you get to know the people that are running the business. So it's been a great experience getting to know where we can get different things locally. So a lot of those little specialty stores are connected to people's homes. So they are back in the neighborhoods, not necessarily listed on Google. And they often are open. They might take a siesta in the middle of the afternoon. They might be open late, but usually their hours are posted. So I want to talk about just a few things that are hard to find here. I already mentioned cheese. So cheddar cheese is nearly impossible to find. Sometimes at the grocery stores, there'll be a little kind of Americanized section with stuff that is very expensive, and maybe there'll be cheddar cheese there. We have found a place, Sam's Club actually has like brie and blue cheese, kind of some of the European cheeses are available, but they're not super common. They're a little bit harder to find. Pet food, pet supplies, that especially the high quality stuff is a little bit harder to find. You're not supposed to bring it across the border, but it seems like it's okay, especially if it has beef in it. I think that's what they're most worried about, is bringing down diseases. Finding high quality pet food can be a challenge, and it can be very expensive. We've been kind of amazed at how much cat litter and cat food and dog food we buy now from Petco and have it shipped here, or from our local veterinarian. Bags of dog food, a decent sized bag of dog food costing $100 is nothing. It's not how the locals feed their dogs. They either feed them really low quality dog food or just table scraps. Pet food and also pet supplies. Like I said, getting a pet bed for Nugget, our golden retriever, was a challenge. We had to buy that online through Petco and pay an awful lot of money for it, but she's worth it. Triscuits. If you're coming down to the southern Baja, please bring me some Triscuits. They are impossible to find here. So you'll find when talking with locals, what are the things that you cannot get and that you should try to bring down, and bringing them down as presents is even better. But sometimes there are stores that have these things every once in a while. And we've heard that the stores here are more likely to have those things during kind of expat season when people come down for the winter, and they're less likely to have them during the summer when many of the expats head north. Another thing that we miss is Beyond Burgers. There's not a lot of vegetarians down in Mexico, so getting vegetarian food is a little bit more tricky. Lots of things have meat in them, but especially kind of the more gourmet vegetarian stuff like Beyond Burgers that are more common or becoming more common in the States. They just haven't made it down here yet. So there's so many just little things that are hard to get here. You can get stuff on Amazon from Amazon.com in the States. A lot of it will be shipped down, but you can't get everything from Amazon down here, and you have to pay shipping and an import fee at the border. So it definitely adds some fees. But let me talk about Amazon more in the next section. So we are able to get things from Amazon down here, but you have to pay shipping fees, which sometimes can be really high, and import fees, which is like 15%. So things cost more, and not everything that you can find on Amazon is able to be shipped here. There's also Amazon.com-.mx. Mercado Libre is another place, but really we've been using mostly Amazon.com for the things that we are looking for here, like the security cameras and stuff like that are really kind of hard to find locally, or landscape lighting. That's another thing that we had trouble finding locally. And we had to train everyone how to find our house. The address here is really kind of strange. Like I mentioned earlier, we had the columns that are closest to the street painted yellow, so we can include in the address line with yellow columns or our WhatsApp number to help people to find it. But we're slowly training the delivery drivers to know where our house is, so that when they get a package for us, they know how they're going to find our house. Most of the people who deliver packages want a signature, so you have to be here. They won't just drop it off. Sometimes they will drop it off, but mostly they want someone to be home to confirm that they received the package. As I mentioned, we can also shop at petco.com. There's actually petco.com.mx. I think that's where we've been buying things from. It is a little pricey, but we're able to get things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to get locally. So just want to go through a couple of lessons learned as we wrap up the video here, kind of things that we've learned that we can pass on to you. As I mentioned earlier, everything takes a lot longer than you would expect. So plan on that, especially when you're going into town. Think about accomplishing 3 things, but if you get one of them done, be happy and take the win. You need to have a schedule to pay your bills, because the bills get necessarily sent to you. You need to know that you need to get them paid on time. Knowing Spanish is a great thing, even just knowing some Spanish so that you can work through and try to start having a conversation with people. But even just switching over to Google Translate, people understand that, especially when you're starting to talk about complex things, being able to type it into your phone and have it translate into Spanish and you can show it to them it can be really helpful sometimes. So the people here in Mexico are really nice. People are smiley, happy. They want to be helpful. Life here is a lot more simple. It's just a different way of life. It's a slower way of life. So it's something you need to get used to, but it's definitely something that keeps you happy. If you don't already have one, get a WhatsApp account. They're free, and they're the best way for communicating with people outside the United States, probably. And you can call or text through WhatsApp. What I found is texting is a lot easier because it can just go a little slower. And if you need to, you can translate a word in Google Translate and kind of understand what's going on with the conversation, but definitely get WhatsApp. And text support by phone sucks. There's a few places that had English operators. Sometimes their English was good, sometimes bad, but for the most part, it's communicating in Spanish, and it's hard to communicate in Spanish unless you're pretty fluent. So my Spanish is a little bit mediocre, and having those conversations in person is a lot easier because you get a lot more. There's a lot additional ways to communicate when you're in person. And also there's very few, for English, press 9. I've only found one place that had that on their little phone tree. And as soon as I press 9, the next menus were in Spanish again. So one thing we haven't done that we plan on doing in the future is buying a car. So I really don't have a lot of information about that. And I know it's tricky. So definitely if you want to look into buying a car here, find some other YouTube videos on buying a car because there's lots to think about when you're doing that. Moving to Mexico is so worth it. The people are awesome. The prices are usually pretty low. The weather can be awesome all year, or like here in Baja California Sur, the weather is awesome in the winter and a little bit hot in the summer. So I'd say, maybe the majority of expats that come down to Baja California Sur are here during the winter months, but there's a huge group of people who stay here all year. If you're going to be one of those people, you just want to make sure that you have a pool and air conditioning. We are planning to be here about 3 to 5 months a year and spend the summers up in Portland, Oregon. As I mentioned, this is part 2 of my series on moving to Mexico. If you haven't watched part 1, you'll find it over here. That's more about the procedures of getting across the border and buying a home and whatnot. And I'm sure if you look down the side of this video, you'll see that YouTube has suggested all sorts of other videos about moving to Mexico. Best of luck with your journey.